Esther, can I take a step back and ask you, with the convergence of 5G technology, AI, and data, what do you think are the biggest opportunities that are going to come out of this era right now?
Thank you for having me. With the AI and 5G actually goes hand in hand together. So for AI to be commercially, properly commercializable, you actually need a very good infrastructure, and 5G being one of the infrastructure for AI to actualize. So this is very important for us. In terms of the actual commercialization part, we're seeing a lot of opportunities right now. That SenseTime is a platform company first and foremost. So we have a lot of different verticals. So autonomous driving, as you mentioned, medical surgery, medical diagnostics, as you just mentioned. Also, in terms of education, smart city, those are areas that we're seeing a lot of potential for commercialization. And going back to the previous speaker, Dr. Lee, in fact, our company has been very blessed since founding in Hong Kong 4 years ago. We have been growing quite rapidly. So the top line has been growing at triple digit for the past 4 years. And we do see that now that with a bigger base, it's probably not going to be as high going forward, but it's still looking very healthy growth pipeline. So we do see very good commercialization opportunities across these sectors.
So top line triple digit growth. Are you profitable yet as of now?
We have been actually breaking even for the last 2 years already. So this is also something that sets us apart from a lot of the startups. So we are very blessed in that position.
In terms of adjusted or net gap, can I just?
We cannot, let's just leave it at that.
I see. Well, I did want to touch upon what Kai-Fu Lee said earlier, but let me ask, because we did report quite recently that you are doing a $2 billion pre-IPO round. How's that coming along?
Okay, so we don't have an official answer to that because this is actually not officially announced. I just want to say that the company itself is in a very healthy financial position right now, and whatever that and capital raising obviously is a normal part of any company's activity, but obviously this is very opportunistic and nothing has been confirmed as of yet.
Maybe we'll have this conversation in 6 months' time again.
I'll let you know when it happens. Yes.
So what Kai-Fu Lee was saying earlier, this disconnect between AI companies, their valuation, and what they're actually happening on the ground. Are you seeing any of that? Because you invest in AI companies as well. When you look at yourself and also the broader trend, what do you see?
It's a very peculiar situation because we are a AI company ourselves, and we also invest in other potential. We are also investing in other companies that can potentially be beneficial, be a beneficiary of our technology. So there are twofold to this story. If you look at all the unicorns in China versus US, in China there's almost 100 unicorns now. And majority, more than 50% of them are unicorns based on business innovation, for instance, e-commerce, for instance, in that sort. But in the US, there is 150, 160-ish unicorns, and you see that 40% of them are AI related, AI robotics related. So the nature of the growth of the company in between two countries are quite different, and we continue to see that there are some very interesting opportunities in China with potentially can use our technology, companies that can use our technology to be a great investment. So I want to give you an example for that. So recently we have invested in a company that specialize in advertising production. So, for instance, if you look at the Voice of China, for instance, there are people singing in the background. There are people singing, and the background there is all kinds of advertisement. These advertisements are actually placed post-production. So what we can do is we can replace any of these advertising with, for instance, any cell phone brand from Huawei to Xiaomi, for instance, or the judges, if they have a can of Wahaha, we can change them to a Coke or Pepsi very easily post-production. So these kind of companies actually benefit from our investment because we don't just invest money, we actually invest our technology with them. Because of that, they can significantly broaden their potential clientele. When you and I watch a video, so for instance, if you're a guy and if and maybe me, when we watch the same video, maybe a girl with a lipstick can come up with the background versus if a guy watch the same video, we can make a for instance, a Bugatti come out of the background, and it's all done very seamlessly. So we can tailor make advertisement. So this is just one of examples of companies that we invest that we can enhance them, and we invest our technology as well as money in them, and we continue to see valuation creation in that sense.
That's fascinating. Smart advertising cater to personalized tastes and their own demands. Well, when you look at these companies that you're investing in, obviously the smart advertising business is very complementary to your own business. Are you only investing in ones that are strategically complementary, or are you also doing as a financial investment as well?
Uh, we rarely do pure financial investment. We don't rule it out, obviously, but we rarely do that. One of the core strengths for SenseTime is that we have one of the world's largest AI research platform. In fact, the company right now is 3,000 people. 1/3 of them is in research. We have 200 AI scientists, PhDs, and 40 professors. That makes us the largest Chinese AI research team globally. So with that kind of backdrop, it helps us to quickly identify a potential business, whether they can be a great, whether we can enhance their business model or not very quickly. So based on that, yes, we do a little bit. We don't really rule financial investment, but for most part, it's a strategic focus.
Yeah. Speaking of your researchers, very interesting. I was scrolling through their PowerPoints, and most of their scientists and executives all have Olympic math titles. They're all like gold Olympic winners for math and physics. So very, I would say it's, how do you even manage a bunch of geniuses at a company like yours?
Well, I say that what really sets us apart, what sets SenseTime apart is that even though we are a startup, the company is only 4 years old, the founding team or the founder of the company has been doing AI for almost 3 decades. You can imagine that the reason that you hear a lot of AI companies in the last few years is because of machine learning, a lot of this AI, a lot of this algo can be commercialized. But before that, you can imagine that AI actually as a topic of research for the longest time is actually a fairly lonely research topic. So what our founding team has done is they always place a very, very strong emphasis on the core foundation, on the research of the building blocks of research of AI, which really sets us apart from a lot of these other startups. So the company in the founding team has been doing this for 3 decades, and we expect to do it for another decade, 3 more or even more decades going forward. And so with that as a backdrop, we actually built the world's second largest supercomputing center. So the largest one is in the US, it's called the Summit. SenseTime has the world's second largest, and the third largest is also in China called Taihu Zhiguang. But the difference of these supercomputing center is that our supercomputing center focuses a lot on research only. So if you're a scientist working for SenseTime, you actually enjoy a very, the environment for study is very good. In fact, an algo that needs, say, weeks or even months to run at our competitors, it would take hours to run in our company. So you can imagine it's actually a pretty good environment overall. And as a result, actually the result prove itself. SenseTime actually published, in terms of computer vision, the world's 3rd most amount of papers. So the number 1 is Microsoft, and number 2 is Carnegie Mellon, number 3 is actually SenseTime. So.
That's fascinating. Investing into infrastructure, supercomputing centers, like you said, is one area of expansion. Are there other areas that you are looking at right now for investing in expansion?
So the overall goal of the company is that we want to democratize AI. Right now, if you look at the past, the history of the last decade, a lot of the key technologies owned by the government, say nuclear science or rocket science, for instance, are all government-owned. But AI, the revolution of AI, happened so fast in the last few years that, in fact, the world's top AI companies or AI technologies are actually in the hands of private companies such as us or such as Google. So right now, most companies still don't have a proper AI strategy yet, or they don't know how to monetize from AI. So right now we have a few early adapters. Our company right now, we have already 700 business partners that we are dealing with. But the goal obviously is that once you have once you have the early adapters, you're also going to democratize it to other different verticals and also other different regions as well.
Um, I want to make sure I understand what you said accurately just now. So you're saying that if a company like a traditional retailer, they have a lot of data, they don't know what to do with it, they
Yes.
can come to you. How do you share the data? Who does the data belong to, and who does how do you split it down? Can you walk me through that?
Sure, this is a very good question in terms of privacy. So we are not a data company, so we don't own any of the data, just so you know. The data belongs to you, or when you sign a waiver, the data belongs to the company. So what we do is we use the data to generate algos that can potentially feed back to the company and up to them to use the data. So we as a company, we don't own any data on ourselves. So which is also a very key reasons for us that help us to do expansion overseas. So right now, we actually have offices. We currently have offices in Hong Kong, and we have in various cities in China. But we actually also have offices in Singapore. We have offices in Japan and Singapore, and we do plan to have offices in other parts of the world. So say take Singapore as an example. It would be very impractical to say we get all the data locally from Singapore, we do the algo in China and feed it back to Singapore. It is not practical, and it is against the privacy interests for our users. So we actually have a supercomputing center located next to our clients. So none of the data is feed back to.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Singapore. We are seeing all these data localization laws coming out of Southeast Asia as a whole, as a region, for example, in Vietnam and Thailand right now, all kinds of regulatory setups coming into place. These are questions that startups have never had to think about before just a few years ago. How does that impact how you position yourself as a AI company, a company that has to deal with vast amounts of data?
As I mentioned, we actually do not own any of the data. So in Singapore, for instance, one of our clientele is Singtel. The data belongs to Singtel. We just help them to process the data, and all the processing are done locally.
So nothing is done on the cloud?
Nope.
No, all locally. Is that the strategy
It
going?
depends on the client, obviously. But if it's a big enough client, then obviously it's done locally.
I see, I see. Can we circle back to your portfolios a little bit? How many companies have you invested in as of now?
Mm, we have invested in less than a dozen of them.
Less
Yes.
than a dozen. And any of them are mini unicorns by now?
We obviously have hope that they will become unicorns, mini unicorns. The idea of our investment is that we have to identify a business, and we believe that this business can genuinely benefit from our technology. So, for instance, the smart advertising company is one of them. Apart from that, we actually seeing a lot of opportunities in the 2B sector because we are a 2B company, and if you look at the R&D budget for, let's say, a Chinese company versus a US company, a traditional Chinese company spend less than 10% in IT/R&D versus a US company. And that's where we come in and we say, okay, instead of spending money on building your own AI team, why don't you use our AI, which is already, we spend years and years to develop, and it's actually very mature, and we can do it cheaply, and we can use it for you and see how we can improve your business. So we have made investment in the smart advertising. We have made investment in medical field. We have made investment in autonomous driving. We will be making some investment in other 2B sectors as well.
That's great. Cecilia, can we pull up the poll on the screen right now so the audiences can look at it? While we wait for that, yeah, so here are the questions. What is your biggest concern when it comes to data and privacy? And while the audiences make their choice, can I ask you about an area that has gotten a lot of attention recently, especially during the China-US trade disputes? This issue keeps coming up where people are saying, companies in China, they always have to abide by the law, which sometimes means that the government can have full access to all your data and all your information if they request for it. What is the dynamic between SenseTime and the government in China right now?
Thank you for the question. In fact, we do not directly deal with the government. This is a very good question. So we deal with we do have a part of the business that is a smart city, which would do a lot to enhance the safety of its citizens. But we do not directly deal with the government. The government is not our client. Rather, we would actually enable the system integrators, and the system integrators would be the one that helping the government to configure whatever the government needs. So as I said, we are two provider, and we are an enabler and we enable different kind of businesses. And one of the type of business that we enable is the system integrators.
Interesting. Can we see the results, please? Oh, so personal data leaks still top of the chart. Oh, changing a little bit, but companies working with government on surveillance. What's your thought on those answers just here?
I can totally understand why people feel this way, but in fact, if you think about it, right, if you have a computer to do put this way, the cameras are there already, by the way. In China, there are 20 million cameras. If you look at per capita camera, it's actually double in the US and China, by the way. So the cameras has always been there, but in the past, or even currently, a good chunk of the work is done by human. So a human eye, they can look at all kinds of things that you're supposed to look out for, and things that you probably don't want them to look at. So when you have a computer to do it for you, in fact, in some way, it protects the privacy a little bit because they only look at things that they're supposed to watch out for.
Right, right. That's very interesting. This whole dynamic, the live streamers in China still, right now, they still have these actual human beings operating behind the rooms.
Yes.
So a few months back when I was talking to your co-founder, Xu Bing, he told me that you wanted to be the Palantir of China. Is that still the accurate description? Or is that how we should understand where your visions for the company's futures are?
The goal of the company is to democratize AI, and we want to use it in various areas, such as obviously smart cities just mentioned, and for instance, medical, education, and autonomous driving, and we actually have, for instance, logistics. We don't want to limit ourselves to do just for one particular type of company in that sense, because AI can be used in so many ways, and we're still exploring ways that AI could be utilized. Give you an example. So one of the new areas that we have is education. So we actually have the world's first textbook, high school textbooks for AI. Okay, and that was published last year. It has quickly become one of the best sellers on Taobao. And interesting enough, we believe that China actually is missing 5 million AI scientists in the next 2 decades. And we actually have been putting a lot of emphasis into growing the next generation of AI literate engineers. And so for that measures, we do want to build a society that's enhanced and be enabled and be better because of AI. So it's not just restricted to one particular sector for that matter.